Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Environment Select Committee today on the 22nd of February. My name is Rachel Lake. I'm the chairman of this committee, and what I'd like to do first, so that everyone knows who everyone is turn to my vice chairman on the right and ask everyone to introduce themselves with where they represent.
Hello, good morning. Sergeant.
Can you please use your microphones as we are being webcast?
Hi, my name is Marissa Heath. I'm the County Councillor for Englefield Green and Egham Town.
Good morning. I'm Mike Goodman. I'm Cabinet Member responsible for the environment, transport and waste.
Hi, I'm Lisa Craig-Griffin. I'm the Countryside Manager for the County Council.
Jonathan Essex, County Councillor for Redhill East.
Keith Whittam, County Councillor for Walthamstow and Guildford.
Mike Bennison, Hinchley Wood, Claygate, Oxshott.
And my officers?
I'm Ben Cullimore, Democratic Services Assistant.
And I'm Angela Guest.
Angela is very kindly looking after us while our own Huma is on holiday. Because we have members of the public present, I'd like to read the fire alarm instructions. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, everyone proceed to the exit, which is the door behind us, out of the Ashcombe suite, walk down the corridor, turn right down the stairs and on the front entrance of County Hall. If it is, we are not, or we have not been notified of a test this morning, so that anything will take over 30 minutes, may I suggest you pop into Kingston and 30 minutes later you come back. But we're not expecting anything. In line with our guidance use of social media, I am happy for anyone attending today's meeting, including members of the committee and council, to use social media, providing that it does not disturb the business of the meeting. And please note, as I've mentioned, today's meeting is being webcast live. Can I ask members, or remind members, to use their microphones and speak clearly into the microphone when speaking. We'll move on to agenda item number 1, apologies for absence and substitutions. I have not been notified of any apologies. Item agenda number 2 is minutes of the previous meeting on the 5th of December, which was held at the Fire and Rescue Station at Reigate. May I take it that all members have read the minutes and have your approval for them? Yes, Jonathan.
There were some actions that we're going to follow up back to the members after the meeting. I can't see them in the minutes. I'm just questioning as to how those responses, which relate to the community recycling centres, would be made available to the public.
We have 2 follow-up items from the minutes. I'm just looking to where I have them noted, but you are quite right. Yes. They're coming up, Jonathan, under our Tracker and Forward Work programme. They were from the last meeting. No, you are quite correct. We have not received the sponsors yet. Yes? I'm sorry, I'm looking at you, Jonathan. Have you found them under item 7? But the responses have not gone out yet. So we will be chasing them up on the forward programme.
The responses were sent to the committee because I signed them off. Yes, definitely.
Then we need to check up on that because they've not been recorded as being received, and no one has actually on the committee confirmed with me they've received them. Yes, Jonathan?
My question wasn't so much whether they've been received by the committee, but as they were in the committee and they were scrutinising something that's in public, my concern was that the responses should be public rather than just informally to the committee.
What I will personally do as chairman is check with the cabinet member who feels that they've gone out. If they have gone out, I will make sure that they are sent out again and attached to the minutes of this meeting. Would that be acceptable, Jonathan? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And one minor point, which is the bottom of page 27, it looks like the commentary on the fire station item looks incomplete. It is, only because I can see it ends mid-sentence, that's all.
Can you tell me exactly where I'm looking, please?
At the bottom of page, I think it's 27, but it's got sort of crossed out on it. There's a load of slides with words under the slides describing what the slides were saying. I'm trying to find the right page. Takes slightly longer on the electronic.
27, I have it finishing up with paragraph 14. The focus groups indicated that residents are looking for the following benefits from a visit to the countryside.
Right, well I'm on the wrong page then, sorry.
Follows over to the top of the next page. Oh, we're looking...
21
sorry.
Maybe?
No, you're looking at the appendix.
21, sorry. It's 21, but it looks like 27 the way it's numbered. It's page 7 of the slides on the fire station item.
Lots of... I can see exactly what you're looking at. You're looking at the appendix and not... I was looking at the main page of the agenda, item 27. I can see exactly what you mean. I will follow that up. I'm not quite sure why it's dropped off the page, but it certainly has. Thank you. Yes, Angela.
It looks like the same problem has occurred on each page. It's obviously where the slide doesn't fit onto the page. I'll make sure that that's corrected.
So it will be corrected and a full attachment will be attached to the minutes. With those noted, does anyone else have any comments on the minutes? May I sign them with your approval? Thank you. I have them with me. I will sign them at the end of the meeting. The attendance list is just coming round, members. That takes us on to item number 3, declarations of interest. All members present are required to declare at this point in the meeting or as soon as possible thereafter any disclosures of pecuniary interests, and if they wish to, they may also add personal interests to this declaration. May I remind members that on declarations they also cover family members, whether they be partners, spouses, children as well. Is there any such declarations? Yes, Jonathan.
Not pecuniary, but I'm a member of the CPRE in Surrey.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Do members need to declare if they're a member?
Sorry, Keith.
Do members need to declare if they're a member of Surrey Wildlife Trust? Because I am. I see no conflict of interest here. I'm a subscribing member.
I see no conflict of interest, but we will make a note if you are a member of the Surrey Wildlife Trust.
That's fine.
I think
I'll say
when
to them
I'm
exactly what I say here.
there is transparency is always the best way to go. I mean, I'm a member of Wisley, but I think we could extend it on. You know, we could go a little bit too far, but I think it's as well to note, particularly as the Surrey Wildlife Trust is a partner on one of the agenda items. Is that everyone? Thank you very much. Item agenda number 4 is questions and petitions. We have received no questions or petitions to this meeting. Item number 5 is the Countryside Estate Strategy. And I welcome Lisa. Lisa, I always mispronounce your double-barrelled surname in the centre. So would you kindly introduce yourself in full? And do you mind me calling you Lisa? May I hand it over to you? Please presume that our members have read your paperwork, but if there's anything you would like to add to it.
Can I just set the scene a little bit, if I may? And
Thank
to
you.
give members some background, the decision to go out to produce a 25-year strategy came at a meeting with Surrey Wildlife Trust and Surrey County Council. We realised at one of our board meetings that actually we were deciding the priority for the countryside, what we were going to spend the money on, what were the issues. And we realised actually we ought to consult with the public to see where the public saw is the key things they wanted us to spend the money on going forward. And so I was very pleased that this committee we put together a members' reference group, and they were the ones that came up with the questions we asked the public. The issue today is to start to put some more bones to the strategy, and it will then be written later this year. And then will be launched in probably the mid-May. The important thing for us with the strategy is it's really mirroring the government 25-year environmental strategy. And it gives us a great opportunity in Surrey to ensure the public tell us what the priorities are. We put the strategy together, and then over the next 25 years we deliver it. I think it's really interesting that when you look at the Surrey County Council 2030 vision, one of the key things that came across there was the environment, how important our residents recognise the environment. And I think whether we talk about plastics, air pollution, etc., we have a real good record of actually putting environmental issues really at the front. And I think this 25-year strategy is a great opportunity for us to ensure that we protect and, more importantly, hand over this countryside for the next generation in a better condition than when we took over. I'm very passionate about it. I think this gives us an opportunity, and dare I say, it gives the public to challenge us as we go through the next 25 years, and many of us may or may not be here in 25 years' time, to monitor our performance in looking after the countryside, which is really important. With that, I'm going to hand to Lisa, who's done all the work, and I'm quite happy later on if there's any specific questions you wish me to answer, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mike. Lisa.
Okay, I'll start off with pronouncing my name. It's Lisa Craig-Griffin. I won't go into the checkered history as to where that name came from, but it was invented. The first bit, the Cray bit. Right. Mike's just given you a sort of background as to why we started working on the strategy. We haven't had a strategy for the entire countryside estate for quite a while. There are management plans for each site. So it's not as if we're forgetting about the estate. It's got plans, but it doesn't have an overall strategy. And this felt like the right time to be looking at a strategy. I've got a few slides, which some of you have your backs to, but don't worry, I can go through them, which just take you through the process we've been going through and take to where we've got to at the moment. I'm not going to reiterate everything that's in the papers, because I'm assuming, as your chairman, is that you've read them all. Go to the first one, please. Right, first of all, we started off with the obvious thing, and that was to get the engagement piece with major landowners, and these were people like the National Trust, the Forestry Commission, the Woodland Trust, the big landowners that have access agreements with us, other landowners. We spoke also to the Country Land and Business Association, the CLA, and to the National Farmers Union, NFU, to the local representatives, and talk to them about what the issues are, what we should be looking at. And interestingly, what they were very keen on seeing the county taking a role in is actually leading by example. So they were quite keen on us facilitating things. So I might come back to that as we go through. and you can see the sort of concerns that were expressed were just the same as we were expressing. We've had various meetings with local community liaison groups, because there are 4 liaison groups around the 4 biggest areas of the countryside estate. We met with them. We've also had a follow-up workshop with representatives from those liaison groups. We've gone on to discussions with the Access Forum, the Surrey Parks and Countryside Forum, which is a forum of representatives from districts and boroughs and other organisations that manage parks and countryside, just as it says. So it's a good representation of those people involved in managing countryside sites. And with the Surrey Countryside and Rural Enterprise Forum, we brought together the members from that forum, which to a certain extent does duplicate some of the other groups, but it meant we could get everybody in one room and discuss where they thought we should be going with this strategy. We also, as many of you will know, had a survey out called Caring for the Countryside from September to December of last year. I'm just going to run through some of the key results from that. They're not the only bits that came out, but they're the key results. Next one, please. Okay, we had the 1,367 responses. Those give you the age group splits, which are relatively common for the bulk of the respondees to come from the 45 to 74 age group, which I count myself in. But we did push to try and get as many younger people to respond as well, just so that we had a better representation. The good news that came out of it, 93% thought that that the landscapes and habitat protection was either important or very important. So we've got a strong support for the countryside and for the role the County Council has and the Wildlife Trust in protecting the countryside. The next one is a 3-way split, which again is not very surprising. This was a question relating to whether people thought we should try and generate income from the estate to protect the estate for the future against public sector cuts. And so that was very clearly a 3-way split. Most people that visit countryside estate go at least monthly, and they travel from the local area, which again we had expected to get. And the most often visited sites: Newlands Corner, Chobham, Ockham and Wisley, Wootton Estate and Norby Park. And for those of you who aren't very au fait with the countryside estate, I've got a map coming up later, and there is a table which I'll just talk about when we get to it. And people generally do access those sites by car, but a fair number do walk and a fair number cycle as well. So we've got quite a lot of local people. Next one, please.
Lisa, all of this information is actually in the report you've given us.
It is.
I was hoping you were going to give us an additional information, because all members have, or at least should have, read all of this information.
That's fine. What I was trying to do is pick out some of the key things. I mean, I'll rush through it quickly if that's helpful. Because things like the way people use the estate is quite key for us, because it means we know where we need to concentrate our efforts. And most people walk. Most will walk quite a lot walk with the dog, but not everybody. The majority are walkers that come to the estate, so we know that's where most of our key users are. There was quite an interesting percentage that run and cycle as well. That was probably higher than I would have expected to see. Horse riding is relatively low, again, not unexpected. Time spent with children is reasonably high, actually, but we'd like to see more of that. Next one, please. Right, and these were what people wanted to see more of. Again, not very surprising, but these are our indications as to what we should be looking at as facilities on the sites. So walking routes came out fairly high. Accessible paths. Cycle paths, 10%, is not huge, and it's only in certain areas. More information, and that came out in the focus group as well, which we ran 2 focus groups, and that also came out in the focus groups. The need to know more about where they can go and to know more about the sites. More way markers relate to that as well. Toilets, again, fairly high percentage. Not that we're going to rush out and build toilets all over the estate. Cafe refreshment kiosk, again, reasonably high. Play areas was probably relatively low, but then that does reflect, I think, to a certain extent, the nature of the people that responded to the survey. Next one, please. I just picked out a couple of things which were quite interesting from the focus groups and the workshops. And this was quite a distinctive difference between the responses we had from the younger users and the older users. Younger users are up to about 40, but it started out in the early 20s. That particular group, and then the older groups go up into the 50s, 60s. And the younger users were much more prepared to pay for things on the countryside. They wanted to understand the costs of managing the countryside. They felt we were not good at putting across those messages. We should be putting them across more effectively because they are interested, and as I say, they were more prepared to pay as well. The older group felt that they already paid to go onto the countryside, and I think this is because they had already had all those things free and therefore expected it to remain free. So there was much less inclination to want to pay from that older age group. However, they were still interested in information as well. Again, there was a difference about the way that information should be put across, in that the younger age group, as I don't think surprise you at all, were much more interested in having their information on their phones or digitally relayed to them, whereas older people would prefer to see information boards on site. So we have those two differences to consider as we go forward. Next one, please. Okay, the emerging themes. As I've said, there was quite a lot about the education engagement. People that wanted to know more about the sites, they wanted to know where they could go. We deliberately picked for some of the focus groups people who didn't necessarily use all of our countryside estate, and in some cases didn't use our countryside estate but used other countryside sites. And many people don't know about what we've got on the estate, so there is an information consideration there. There's also a consideration, I think, about more and more of the population being more urban and having less understanding of countryside. I think there was a desire to know, and also people who didn't know, and maybe don't want to know, I don't know. But there is a desire anyway to know more. Access to health and well-being, again, that's quite a strong message coming across. People want to be able to access these sites, but they do need to know more about them. They want to be guided more on those sites. So we're looking at potentially more guided trails, perhaps more people interaction with visitors so that they can go on guided walks and learn more that way. Natural capital came across quite strongly. That came across from all of the people we spoke to, including the other landowners, was the importance of joining up sites of biodiversity, the role in reducing flooding, the role in cleaning water. Forestry Commission are very interested in that particular area, and providing sites where wildlife can flourish. The other theme, which isn't in fact in the paperwork, because that was one that I've been recently looking at, that was coming out, was the supporting our farmers and businesses in the countryside and demonstrating by example. We have a number of farms on the countryside estate, and I think it's fair to say that some of those farms are struggling because the land isn't brilliant, and they need to be supported in how they can take their farms forward. I think Bockett's farm is probably an example of where they found a niche, they found a way of diversifying their farm and turned it into a farm park. Not every farm can turn into a farm park, but we do need to support those farmers in how they might be able to continue to farm that land rather than us having to go in and manage it ourselves. Next one, please. Right, this is the last text slide. This is just to show you the structure which we're putting together now for the strategy. You've got this in your pack, so there's nothing dramatic coming out of this. So it's just that what I'd like some of your advice and comments on is, does that structure make sense? Do you think we're picking up some of the right things from, because you've also obviously got that summary of the survey, and whether you think we're going in the right direction. So I won't dwell on that slide. I think we've sort of talked about that. Last slide, please. Right, the last one is a picture of the countryside estate. You can see the blue, or actually turquoise potentially, sites scattered across the county. On the table, which I think some of you will have in front of you, what we've got there is a table showing all the sites, showing you where they are, talks about where they are, what designations they have. About 70% of the countryside estate is designated for its wildlife conservation importance. This also talks about the size of those sites and the sort of local communities. Something else which is coming out quite strongly from all the responses we've had is how people would like to get more involved in managing the estate. Now, I shall be quite honest, from the point of view of the resources I have, that's quite difficult because we need to be able to work with people and we need to have the staff to be able to do that. But it's something that I am putting into the strategy because I personally think it's really important that we do get the communities more involved in managing their local sites. Now, how that involvement works needs to be discussed with those local communities. It could be they volunteer on the site. It could be they get more involved with those sites. They could lead walks. They could get more involved in that communication education side. But I think there's a huge potential there which currently is untapped, and I think largely it's become untapped because of the, as I say, resource situation on on our side, and to a certain extent the Wildlife Trust side. But that also came out from all the districts and boroughs we spoke to. It's come out from the other organisations we've spoken to. And so potentially, I think we could collaborate on that particular area and get more of us involved with working with the local communities. I think on that note, I will stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was actually involved originally because the first time round as a member of Surrey County Council, I was here from 1997 to 2005, and I was part of the team that worked with officers and members when we considered taking Surrey Wildlife Trust, as well as other options, on for managing our countryside estate. At that time, we all worked to the sustainability of our estate for the future generations of Surrey. It was always the intention, going back to the 90s and in 2002 when Surrey Wildlife Trust took on the estate, that it would become self-sustaining. And I remember it clearly. It was one of the biggest pieces of work that I was doing when I was first elected. So to think that I am sitting now, 16, 17 years later, looking at the first strategy, I am disappointed. I will make that comment personal. I am disappointed that we're in a situation of misunderstanding with residents, because looking at the survey, and I was still receiving emails till 10 o'clock last night, I don't think the survey to me gives me a strong lead on almost anything, because I've got people that want more cycling, and I've got people that don't want cycling at all because they're all dangerous. I've got people that want to walk their dogs, and I've got people that are fed up of finding plastic bags hanging in trees. I've got people that want more boards with information and pointers on the routes, and I've got people that want the boards taken down because it should be natural. I've got people that want our common lands to be left alone and done nothing with, which, to be quite honest, if common land is not managed, it becomes scrub woodland, and common land is gone, and it does need to be managed. I'll say I've gone as far as, if the fox population is up, our common land does badly because we want the fox population down so that rabbits are up, because they eat the tops of the plants in the common land and keep it back the way it should be. And everything I have found in the consultation can be cross-referenced that somebody else doesn't want it. The one thing that comes out exceedingly strongly, in my personal opinion, is that everybody wants the countryside. The one statement that has come out with many residents is that they were offended that there was a statement used that possibly we may have phrased it a little bit better, is that people didn't understand the countryside. I would agree that people know they love the countryside, that possibly they're not aware of all of the management that goes into it to keep it to the quality that it is. But I think we need to phrase that part a little better, because there is no way I want a strategy that would go out to actually offend anyone. That's not what a strategy is about. Neither do I want a strategy that's going to collect dust and sit in the bottom drawer of somebody's desk for the next 10 years. And I feel that I would have preferred the Surrey Wildlife Trust here to give their comments on it. I'm not quite sure why they're not here. There seems to be different views on that. But if we're working in partnership and a strategy is coming to this committee, I feel that both partners should be here to discuss it with us. Now, can I ask, I've got my say out straight away. Can I ask members their comments, please? If we start with Keith, followed by Mike.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Firstly, I would just echo what you said. I would echo what you said about having the Surrey Wildlife Trust here with us today. For whatever reason, they should have been here. I've raised this point before. They're not, and it's a loss to us that they are not. So we can answer that query later. And I entirely agree with your other comments, Chairman. You know, whatever is decided, you can't please everybody. And at some point, people need to understand the rationale. Now, I welcome this summary that we've been given, as I believe it lays the groundwork for setting out a strategy for the countryside over the next 25 years. But those who are opposed to extra money being raised either through car parking charges or more commercial activities are simply closing their minds to the reality of the situation. One person said in his submission to us yesterday, referred to having, quote, a council strategy that is not focused upon money but on our environment, close quote. And therein lies the lack of the grasp of reality. You might as well say to us, don't bother us with anything as tawdry as money. You know, we can't deal with that. It's tawdry. But there are always, alas, plenty of people who are not short of opinions but have absolutely no responsibility for anything. The question that groups like this never answer is how will the annual costs of maintaining places like Newlands Corner and our commons be paid for, if not through, amongst other things, charges for car parking and more commercial activities. All I ever hear from residents are three things. One, and I have to put on a grumpy voice, well, I pay my council tax, don't I? This doesn't grasp the reality that the money now raised by council tax is not enough to provide all of the services that everybody would like everywhere. And at the same time as reduced funding, demands and costs on other services have increased. The second thing they then always say is, well, just take the money from somewhere else that I'm not interested about. Well, refer to my previous answer, because all of the somewhere else's are under the same financial pressure. 3, they then finally give up and say, well, how you pay for it's not my problem, it's your problem. Now, in that they are right, because councillors do have the responsibility to find a way of financing these services that people value, rightly so, well into the future. Some while ago, the Newlands Corner Group did propose to look at a Friends group, but would only consider setting it up if Surrey County Council dropped the idea of car parking charges. They prepared a plan that had not considered a number of legal issues, and Surrey asked them how they were proposing to cover those. Then, of course, they backed off and stopped talking about that. I'm sure that within reason, Surrey County Council, the Cabinet member and the senior officers would consider any ideas for funding that are legal, can be achieved within resources and are preferably ongoing rather than one-offs. I'll quote another example of where this approach is working. Those who were concerned about the possible closure of the Surrey Performing Arts Library, again because of budget pressures, took up my challenge at one of these meetings to rise to the challenge. They set up a new charity and have been working with the council to make that successful. They've stopped just campaigning and they've taken responsibility for the subject they care about. All we ever get, from those who are opposed to either car parking charges or more commercial activities are the same old rehashed arguments. For example, the health benefits and how unidentified money might be saved in the future on adult social care or NHS costs. But does anyone seriously believe that the NHS are going to give Surrey County Council the odd million or two every year so that Surrey can avoid car parking charges when every NHS hospital has car parking charges to raise extra money for their patient services? No, the suggestion is a total, utter nonsense. As you've referred to, Chairman, it was back in 2002 when Surrey County Council first warned that it foresaw the day when it could no longer afford to maintain its countryside estate, which led to the arrangement with Surrey Wildlife Trust. Today, 17 years later, the financial realities have come to fruition, and this strategy is looking at that reality. How can we make sure that the countryside is properly maintained for the benefit of everyone, for all of us, including our children and grandchildren, over the next 25 years and beyond? I'm sorry to say, Chairman, that people have rose-tinted spectacles when they look at the beautiful views from Newlands Corner or walk across one of our commons. They seem to think that it's all natural, but it's not. It is man-made. It's just as man-made as a housing estate built with concrete, bricks and tarmac. The views and the environment we enjoy today at Newlands Corner and on our commons are man-made. They are maintained by man, which does cost money every year. And without that, the commons would soon revert to thickly wooded, boggy areas that would be inaccessible and we would be unable to use. That's why this strategy is needed. I welcome the fact that it has arrived. It's not finished, but hopefully it will not take another 25 years to actually get it, with support from people who want to see it work. If there are others in this room and elsewhere who have other funding proposals, they should come forward and talk constructively to Surrey County Council and not just oppose everything all the time. That's what I get sick and tired of, Chairman. Emails from people who just oppose stuff and they never put forward any constructive alternative suggestion at all. Rant finished.
I was wondering, Keith, I think this is a good opportunity for me to say that our countryside estate is a non-statutory part of the work that we do. It should be a pleasure, and when we're out in it, it is a pleasure, but to manage it is not a pleasure. But the fact that it's non-statutory and Surrey has to look at its statutory responsibilities first is that it will always be more of a struggle to find funding for non-statutory things. And you're quite right, this committee, in its previous form under communities that had the Performing Arts Library, were very strong supporters of the model that we now have. In fact, we suggested it, and I do believe now it's with another committee, but it is working exceedingly well. I'd like to think our countryside strategy is going to work as well. If I move on to Mike, may I suggest that possibly not quite so long as that we took Keith for?
I don't know how you follow that. I just got two or three things. I was asked by John Fury when he was, I think, in charge of this a long time ago, to go to Sevenoaks to a visit about environment. I don't even remember this day. It wasn't this committee. I was latched onto it. But one of the particular things that cropped up, and correct me if I'm wrong, no mention here about disability access. And the meeting that I went to was completely and utterly taken over with access. Things like you can't get a wheelchair through kissing gates, you've got step to one level to another, no proper car parking charges offered, no proper car parking facilities for them to get their things out. I won't go any further than that. I noticed on one of these that somebody sent an email about, well, why the hell do we bother if we can't afford to put the money into this? And I don't know what they're suggesting, whether it's suggesting just get rid of it and flog it all off, I don't know. But we have other things on our map plate, like the Basingstoke Canal. You know, it's costing us an absolute fortune and a lot of headaches out of it. You've got to bring that into what it is, and it doesn't matter what, you never, as you have said, you'll never please everybody, whatever you say. So my real thing there is that, now, is the disability side. And I did at last meeting, or the meeting before the last one, refer to a list of stuff that you could do to make money in a nice way with this land, but it all disappeared, and you were kindly going to try and discover where it was. I'll remind you where the meeting was, and that was someplace I could hardly ever find it, on the Junction 10, and it was in the woods somewhere. I did. All right. So that'll do for the moment, anyway, I think.
I think someone describes a meeting in the woods of Junction 10. I would be a little bit concerned. I wasn't at that meeting. However, Lisa, can I leave you to look for that list? I appreciate exactly what Mike is saying. I think it would be fair to comment that we will never, ever be able to achieve full disability access across our countryside estates. I think we try and we do the very best that we can, and it is slow going, but we are improving. Mike, I can see your face. You want to make a comment on that?
What I'd like to say, I think Mike, well, first of all, let me go back to the phenomenal speech. I don't think I've ever heard a better speech in this committee, Keith. I thought you absolutely nailed it. And I could have written that myself, and I didn't. And I really congratulate you in the way you put that across, because I think you are saying things that many other people are saying, and I thank you for that. Mike, you're absolutely right about access. I think we do a lot, and we're spending money on Newlands Corner to improve that trail. We've put money into the car parks to resurface them to improve the safety. But I've accepted, and this is part of the strategy, will include access. So we will be focused on that. And I think it's absolutely, and perhaps it is fair to say, whilst we've done a lot, but I think we've got to do more. And I take that on board. In what I said to Lisa as part of this strategy, we will have a separate section for access into the countryside going forward. And I think that's really important. But thank you both.
Jan?
Thank you. Probably like you, Rachel, I've been involved in the countryside. I'm not sure whether I should have declared I'm a member of what is known as the Surrey Countryside Partnership Board. But I represent Epsom and Youghal for that, so I'm not sure listening to all this. Right, on that, the only thing is I've just got some comments, so I haven't got a speech like Keith has given, but hey-ho, here we go. But I was only going to say, when it mentions some of the things the people were asking for, out of my members' allocation over the last few years, I've paid for information boards, several. I've done benches, I've paid recently for waymarking in the top part of Horton Country Park. And I don't see any objection from my point of view. We don't charge in Epsom for the 2 sites we've got. We don't charge. But I see no reason why we couldn't charge a small amount. It's when it gets to £3, £4, £5, families and people who are just wanting to pull up, take their dogs or their little children for half an hour, they don't want these huge sums, but a small sum, and it's like everything else, a few pennies makes a big pot in the end, so I wouldn't be objecting to that. The only thing I've got is that when I was chairman of leisure at Epsom, we had Friends of Horton Country Park and Friends of Epsom Common. And because I'm involved with that, they're the ones who do lots and lots of work once a week and carry out loads of things. Could be like styes, loads of things they do. And that's helpful to this council. I'm just thinking that we could actually ask each borough where these sites are. There's none in Epsom, as I know of, other than Howell Hill. That's private. But perhaps those councils could say, well, have we got a Friends for each, and set it up? And that would seem a long way forward. I agree. What I would be against, and I'm clear about that, commercialisation. I do not want to see, I don't mind perhaps a small cafe where that is good, but I just think if you've got benches round your walks, which I've put in, that's great, because the older folk and children, mothers with children can sit down for a breather before going forward. But I think a small cafe, but I definitely wouldn't want to see anything bigger than that going on, because at the end of the day, we're supposed to be looking after, and oh yes, that's the thing, the information boards would tell people who are visiting, and let's be honest, they're moving out of London now, coming to our area now, and unaware perhaps of protocol on these sites. In other words, we've got ancient woodland with bluebells being trampled on by dogs, because people are letting their dogs off and letting them run, and that's ruining a very ancient bluebell wood. So I think information boards, forget what people say about it's this, that. If it's made of wood, it can be looking very nice. So I think there are ways. But I think county councillors, with their funding, it's only a small pot, I know, but could pay for one or two things. And there's 80 of us all, isn't there? I'm doing my bit. Come on, guys. The other 80 can join in as well. So I find this is what I thought it would be. You will get a split, so I don't think you ever will please everybody. But I see no problems with having a very small car parking charge and do that, and that people won't object to £1 or something. But when you start making higher figures, you then stop people visiting, which is what you don't want to do because you want them to come and be healthy. So that's my lot, I think.
Thank you, Jan. Marissa and then Tina.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite... I mean, there's not many times I don't really know how to comment on something like on a survey like this, but as you pointed out, it's so contradictory the whole way through, and I think it's an incredibly difficult task to do. I would defend residents, though, because if you put yourself in the position of residents, you look at the demographics of the people who've replied here. They're either retired or working. They're people who pay and pay and pay. And they pay more council tax each year. They pay more income tax each year. They pay tax on everything, more car tax, the lot. So you can understand that they're thinking, I already pay. Why shouldn't I just be able to use the countryside that I've used for years and years? They don't look at Surrey as an individual entity. They're looking at the whole fact that Surrey are huge taxpayers. And the government's spending fortunes on things like HS2. And yet we can't even provide police and let the countryside be free for people to walk in. That infuriates me, and it's not something that you can answer, Mike, or anyone. It's just a point I want to make, because I think it's unfair. I think it's damn unfair we're sitting here having this conversation when we should have the funds to protect our countryside for our residents. I would say, looking at this, we've got 1.2 residents, 1,367 responses. It's tiny. I know that's not your fault because you've listed in here about the ways you've tried to engage people, but it's still tiny. This isn't representative. How do we comment on something that's such a tiny percentage of the people who are using the countryside of our residents? So I find it really hard to provide any comment on that as well. The movement of parking is something that really concerns me, because in my area, and it's also your area, the Chobham Common patch, I've had numerous complaints from people or statements that they've said, well, we've gone to walk in other areas now where we can park on roads, or we've gone to places like Windlesham, you know, where the pub is, the brickmakers, and they're parking there so they can walk on the land there, the golf course, rather than going to the commons. So I'll be really interested to know if we've already started looking at the analysis of what the charges have brought in, because one of the key points in this is that people are saying free access. I think that was one of the sort of top themes that's come out of this consultation, free access. And I understand fully the need to get money in here, but you've got to do it in the right way. Are the charges too high? As you said, would more people go if it was 50p, and therefore would the revenue increase? I don't know if you've looked at the what's coming back into the coffers yet or not. It's not been a huge period of time. Obviously, things like travellers on Chobham Common is not helping at all. I'm sure no one's paying to park there at the moment. As you've said, Chair, it's non-statutory. In the questionnaire, you've asked people, do they want the land maintained? Do they want countryside maintained? But I think maybe we need to be more explicit. We need to say, would you like the countryside to be maintained? And then almost list the costs and what maintenance means, because I don't think anyone really, I don't particularly know that. What are the costs of maintaining Chobham Common per year? Are you able to tell me that? It would be really interesting to know that, and I think we've got to understand the people who've responded to this consultation are all working or have worked and now retired, professional people who can understand that and look at things like economics and stuff and get their head around it. And we haven't provided any of that information. I just don't know what to do with this. I sort of feel I commented, but I haven't really commented on how we think we should move ahead, because I'm lost on it, frankly, Chair. Thank you.
I think the whole estate is, well, I know it is, it's 2.1 million for the whole estate, but you're interested in your
I want our residents to understand, so that they can make the choice. If this is non-statutory, we should be able to sort of say to people, right, it costs that much to maintain, let's pick Chobham Common, that much to maintain it, or you can leave it and it can grow and be complete wildlife full of animals. Is that what you want? Is that your choice? And let people have that adult, grown-up choice, rather than just kind of saying it's all or nothing. We need to really put it out there. I don't think this consultation's really brought us anything that's that tangible or usable to know how to move forward for our residents.
I think what we're looking at there as a suggestion on the strategy, though we've asked in the past and there's been a breakdown of what each site is, which we didn't have before, our officers did and Surrey Wildlife Trust did. Well, now we have what each site, the size, where it is, what it contains. I do believe those figures are available, Lisa. I'm not asking for pennies, but an average of a percentage of the 2.1 million, you must know on average that each site costs.
To be honest, the whole estate is managed as a whole, and because it's managed by the Wildlife Trust, not directly by us, so we don't have the direct control over those costs. And what it means is that they manage it as a whole, and they have a load of central costs. So it's actually quite difficult to break it down. We can have a go at breaking it down, but it's not easy. It's not easy to break down. So we just know the global costs.
So you're saying Surrey Wildlife Trust would have that? Would they have more of
it? They would have more of it, yes.
It goes back to the point which was made by someone that they should be here today, so we can have that conversation.
Thank you. The only foot you put wrong is that I never get called chair. And the next one is Tina.
Am I working? Oh, I am. Good. Thank you, Madam Chair. Is it on? Oh, good Lord. Right. Right, I'm not going to move. I'll just leave it like it is. There we are. I've got this one now. There we are. Thank you. I've got both on. Oh dear. It's like being in Epsom, isn't it? Right, okay. I've just got a couple of points to make. I'm a member of the National Trust and the Royal Horticultural Society, and I understand there's some reason why we can't have the same thing for our countryside. And I would ask, please, if we could revisit that, because if people could become members of Surrey Countryside, if a trust could be formed, then A, you'd know how much money, a minimum, you'd be getting each year to spend. People who paid or became a member would know that every penny of that was going to be spent on our countryside. And I use an example. I go to Headley because we haven't got our countryside locally. I go to Headley Heath, I walk my dogs, there's poo bins. I do not leave poo around. We have a little cafe there. It's just a caravan that comes and goes. If you're not a member of the National Trust, you have to pay £5. There's, children. There's so many children. The car park's always full. Even when it's raining, the car park's full. And I think if people know that our countryside will be maintained by that money, so I don't understand why we can't have membership as you do with the National Trust. So could I ask, could that be looked into to see whether we could? Yeah? No?
May I ask a question? Does Surrey Wildlife Trust, the other properties they look after, do they have membership?
Obviously, the Surrey Wildlife Trust have a membership. We bought this up 2 years ago or 18 months ago, and their legal people said they could not introduce part of the membership as free car parking for financial reasons. So therefore...
sorry.
So therefore, it wasn't pursued. I think Jan's absolutely right. I wanted it, but I'm told we cannot do it. I think it would have been ideal to have done it. We did ask them 6 months ago to relook at it, but at the moment that doesn't seem a possibility, as I say, for legal stroke finance reasons. That reasons, I think, was the reason I was given.
May I ask, is there... From a legal point of view, I understand what you say about Surrey Wildlife Trust. From a legal point of view, is there any reason that we can't offer yearly car parking tickets across our estate?
We do. They're £60 per annum, Madam and Chairman, and we've sold 600 so far since the implementation of the car parking charges. And for someone with a dog, and they go once or twice, it's, 18p or less a day. And I'd like to answer Melissa's question. Yes, we have got the figures, and I'm going to be making a press statement on Tuesday after Cabinet to inform people of exactly what has happened with the countryside estate since car parking charges, with actual data. Not people's perception that people are not going to the common, they're not going, that we will actually be producing that in answer to a question on Tuesday.
May I suggest on Tuesday, I'm not sure if you got the information, Mike, but that you would take a guesstimate figure of 5 years ago of people visiting, or a period to what it is now, as opposed to last year or the year before. But because comments a lot of people are saying is that people are just not going now for one reason or another. But I don't think our numbers are falling off because of car parking. But may I just suggest that maybe you use a figure of 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and current? No means, Tina.
It's to do with dog walkers, and it's unfortunate in this world there are good dog walkers and there are bad dog walkers. And most people who love their dogs and care will pick up anything that shouldn't be left behind. And as long as there's bins there that, personally, if there's not a bin there, I actually take mine home with me. I have 2 dogs, but if there are bins, then people will use them. But it doesn't matter what we do, we're not going to stop thoughtless dog owners from allowing fouling. So I'm afraid that's a lost cause before we start, in all honesty. Thank you.
I think a certain amount of bins are necessary because people do have rubbish. It's not just dog waste, but there is rubbish. If we move on to Jonathan.
Thanks. No, apologies, Chairman. I've probably got a similar amount to say as your first speaker, as you would expect me to. Firstly, I'd like to question, is this the biggest ever response we've had from the public on a survey specifically asking about the countryside? Although it's not a huge number, it seems to be bigger than the normal 300 or 400 we have for not county-wide things. And I think, therefore, we need to treat the responses that the public have given us really seriously. In terms of strategy and the purpose, I disagree again with Keith that we should put money first and then the environment second. I think for the strategy for the environment, we need to clearly state what our purpose of the environment is and then come back to money second. And I think it's our responsibility to look at this as a strategy to manage the environment and then see on what money we need to do that and where that money might come from and what the options are. And as an environmentalist, I would like to say that I do intend to be constructive. But I think being constructive is also stating clearly what you're against, as well as clearly what you're for, so you can have a very clear strategy of something that's effectively motherhood and apple pie and allows you to do what you want. I like that Lisa said that we're engaging overall for strategy for Surrey, and it's not just about individual sites, and Mike said it was linked to the government's 25-year plan. So I would be disappointed if the strategy went straight in with a purpose and what we were to do with our own sites, without really setting out a framework of what we were expecting from other landowners beyond ourselves. You noted, for example, you engaged with the Forestry Commission. I would note that recently the Forestry Commission was engaged with by the Secretary of State and told that no, he did not accept of oil drilling on their land in Leith Hill. Now, ideas of what we do and do not want for Surrey's countryside should extend to that kind of thing in terms of what we expect for our sites and the other sites. And if we're creating a vision for Surrey, then it should be a vision for the environment of Surrey, not just a purpose of how we manage the countryside estates within a budget, although I understand that that will be clearly part of it. I disagree the countryside is as man-made as a housing estate. I think that we need to have stewardship of the countryside, just like we need to have management of the built environment. But clearly there is a natural element to the countryside which is greater than that of a building. Personally, I think it's okay that the Surrey Wildlife Trust aren't here, because I think this is about agreeing what our vision is, and Surrey Wildlife Trust in this context are the agent which we procure to do what we would then want to do. My concern is if Surrey Wildlife Trust were here, that would suggest that this meeting was solely about what we do on our estate, not that wider vision. I note that this report has an original purpose, which is stated, protecting the land from development, and the importance now shifting more towards conservation. I note that the presentation which you gave had a purpose, which was about educational engagement and health and well-being, and all of that seemed to be about responded to with better information and waymarking. There was a natural capital element, and there was a supporting farmers and businesses in the countryside, which I understand as rural economy rather than visitors and facilitating visitors. I thought that purpose was really clear, and personally I would agree with that. But in the report which you gave us, there wasn't a section called purpose. What only purpose is in that report is in the responses. So you had some principles, not a purpose. There were some aims stated, which relate to the survey, but the only explicit mention to the survey was about the small number of children responding. I would hope that when we generate an aim and a vision which hopefully responds to the public's view, that we might extend the connections between the strategy which we are creating and the responses we get from the public. In paragraph 12, you refer to independent market research. I'll be asking if you can confirm when that's carried out. Does it reflect the service responses? Can you share that independent market research so we can see that and how it feeds into the development of the strategy? In terms of the public responses, I'm particularly interested in the information from page 64 onwards in the report, which is in Annex 1. The bits prior to that is what was shared with the member reference group, which I don't think is exactly as you said, Mike. We didn't develop the questions. We comment on questions which are developed by officers. And we made a number of small changes, but we didn't develop the questions. In terms of the responses that came, access free, improving infrastructure, comments on cycling, positive more than negative, but on both sides. The cycle parking is something we commented on when the car parking charges were brought in. I'd be grateful if you can comment on whether you've brought in the cycle parking as well as the car parking charges, and if so, on how many sites. And I think the information point is as valuable in terms of how we get to the sites as to what we do once we arrive there, because we were talking then about a push-pull situation. You know, if people are going to be charged in car parking, and if that's your strategy, Mike, as the Cabinet lead, then I would like equally to see that we're promoting alternatives to get to those sites, and that information is shared both at the sites and online as was set out. The countryside, I think that reflects the purpose you stated in your presentation well. Health and well-being protected, well maintained, access, concerns about cost. There was concerns noted there about commercialisation, and that there is a need potentially for more funding to be made available as an alternative to commercialisation. That wasn't mentioned in the purpose, but my concern is in the report which you gave us under a section called What Happens Next. You note an audit of sites. I think it's very good that we have an audit of sites, so we have some evidence based on a site-wise distribution across the county to align with the consultation responses, so we can see how the interests of our public and their views correspond to where the current status and protected nature and facilities are on the different sites. And I know you've sent out a sort of a draft skeleton of that with us today. But I was concerned that the second item seems to jump out of nowhere. You mentioned a country park in What Happens Next. I can't see how that's responding to the views of the consultation. And I don't know what it means, because it's not explained. So I'd be grateful if you can explain what you mean by that, how it relates to the consultation. And my concern really going forward, you asked about structure at the start. In that point, I would hope that the structure gave us issues to consider and options to consider. At the moment, the what's next only gave us one option, apart from things which I think are pretty much what we would expect, which is the information and the education and the working with. So I think rather than just jumping to one solution which didn't clearly emanate from the survey responses, it would be in fact it seems to conflict with many of them. It would be great to have, right, okay, this is our vision, and what are the issues and options in response. So the structure, I think we need a clear vision for Surrey. I think we need to have a clear vision and purpose for our estate, and seeing how that compares to the original purpose stated in your report. And I think we need to have some clear objectives as to what we're trying to achieve before we start talking about money and the constraints that brings to the table. I note that paragraph 5 quotes paragraph 4 in your report, which very much relates the way in which we're funding the countryside to the vision. I think we need to have the vision first, the purpose, the objectives, and then start to consider the issues and the options and how we deliver it, rather than mix the two together. And I think if you put money in a vision, it really does constrain the vision of what you're talking about from an environmental point of view. Finally, I hope that you come back with a strategy that has both a clear vision and purpose for the countryside estate before it starts talking about money. It relates to the consultation responses, and it gives us issues and options to go forward. Thank you.
And the last speaker is Sarge.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a bit intriguing that all the respondents were online, and yet on the survey they said if parking is, they prefer cash parking facilities. So everybody's responded online. It's just quite an intriguing one.
Jan, is it a new issue?
It's expanding on what I said earlier about the information boards. Because we know in here it says about cyclists, people are worried, yes. But if you had a large information board by the pay machine that clearly stated, for instance, we say Chobham Common, your parking goes towards 100,000 towards the maintenance of this park or whatever. You know, it tells the residents who are visiting how much it costs per year for them to maintain this wonderful park, etc. And also says things like dogs should be kept on ancient woodland, these sort of things that are relative to each area. We've got it in ours, and so I know what I'm talking about for Epsom, but I can't say about the others. But we've got to give people who are coming perhaps from London out to Surrey now, and more are, how you behave in a country park or just a park. I prefer country park. But how you behave and what that small amount, could be 50 pence charging for a car park, is going towards. And then when people are informed, I think people will accept it. Someone said this is going towards 100,000 this year towards the area you're walking in. You might think, that seems good value. So I had that. But at the end of it all, I know we've got a 100-year plan I passed in Epsom for our management for our 2 sites. We should have a big plan, and then each year you look at what you're achieving. So what Surrey Wildlife should be telling us what they're achieving on each of these sites each year. But I guess we couldn't go for 100 years. So I'm expanding on what I said before, but I really do feel that at the end of the day, we really do have to. I don't want it to be like Disneyland, these sites. I want them to be as natural, but they can't be natural unless they're maintained, say with grazing, like we've got in. And that helps the cattle come in, and that helps other stuff grow, and this is all of it. So I just feel that these information boards should be the do's and don'ts and how you deal with visitors coming onto the sites, which I don't think they do now. Not so much.
Thank you, Jan. We've got awful feedback down at this end. Are we having any luck? Yes? That links very much into what Marissa was saying. The cost of each site and some information, but mainly the cost of each site for members. But then again, it's very useful information for the public as well. I've got to admit, I think publicity with regards to yearly tickets, because at £1.30 an hour, if they only have to visit once a week, and then a yearly ticket, which in a sense is a form of membership, because that ticket, I'm presuming, allows them into any of our, except Newlands. So it is acceptable within all of them except one for £60 a year. There has been quite a lot come out of the meeting for suggestions this morning. My recommendation would be that Lisa takes this information away, incorporates it with a clear vision within the strategy based on the environment before it's based on budget, and that it's coming back to us at our next meeting, which is only a few days before the Cabinet meeting, so that anything that we make comment on at that meeting will need to be tabled at the Cabinet meeting. Now, Lisa has asked for the member reference group to meet beforehand to go through some paperwork with her. Now, the last time we met up, I think there was Jonathan and myself. I'm not quite sure if the Vice Chairman was there. But I remember at one stage every member in this committee said they wanted to be part of that member reference group. And then suddenly we're sitting with either 2 or 3 of us. Who actually formally put their name forward? Tina? Richard is his apologies today. Well, I don't think we'll be seeing Richard. So there is Tina, there's Jonathan. I attend as ex-officiary. My Vice Chairman does. Was there anyone else? Keith, I don't mind. I would rather enthusiastic people attend than pressurising people that don't turn up. So we will log those, but we will circulate everyone when that member reference group is meeting, and all are invited to attend, including Amanda. All are invited to attend. This is the one that we didn't close numbers. We actually all showed an incredible enthusiasm to it, but when it came to the meeting, sadly a lot couldn't make it. So, Lisa, if you incorporate all the comments, please, and our recommendation is that you do that you feed back to the member reference group just prior to you completing it for the Cabinet report, that it will come back to this meeting on the 24th of April, which will be the final Cabinet report we appreciate, and then it goes to Cabinet, I just think 1 or 2 days later, so if we do have any recommendations, they will be tabled at Cabinet. But I think after the member reference group has seen it, after today, and the fact we will have it at the next meeting, I would like to think that it will be there, so that we will not need to table anything at Cabinet. But we reserve that right to do so. Members, are you happy with that? Thank you very much indeed. Lisa, Mike, thank you very much indeed for attending. And now you can go play in the sun. Members of the committee, I've just been informed that there's filming going on in County Hall, and that could be the reason for some of the feedback that we're having. So apologies for that. Steve, would you like to join us, please? Yes? Members, if you want to top up your teas or coffees or finish the cakes, as I said, they're the slimming version, no icing. They are. We are settling down to item number 6, which is the Surrey Fire and Rescue Service Transformation Working Group Scoping Document. Ladies and gentlemen, would you like to introduce yourself, please, for this item?
Denise Turner-Stewart, Cabinet Member for Community Safety, Fire and Resilience.
Jason Russell, Executive Director, Highways, Transport and Environment.
Steve Owen Hughes, Chief Fire Officer, acting at the moment.
Thank you very much and welcome to the Environment Committee. we're asked to approve the scoping document for the working group that was requested at our last meeting. The scoping document, members will note, the original document that went out had a different section under finance. Things overtook the document while it was still out for approval by a cabinet decision, and therefore a full section has been replaced, covering all of the finance. We work on due process. When the document came back and the cabinet and the finances changed, our officer had already left for holiday and the document was made public, so I apologise for that. We have totally put the change into the document now, so can I ask members to refer to the new document that they have in front of them this morning, which is separate from the document that were in the paperwork originally sent to you. I'm going, ladies and gentlemen, do you mind if I call you by your Christian names?
No problem for me.
Fine. Steve, please presume that my committee have read your or have read the Transformation Working Group terms of reference. I'm looking at people. Have you read the financial changes? It is simply a large paragraph coming out and a shorter one being replaced. It is actually blue ink so that you can see the difference. Is there anything, Steve, you'd like to add to this document? Because I know you have had sight of it and had it approved, but since then.
No, so there's nothing I have to add other than, as you said, that financial piece, which you're now all aware of. I'm happy to take questions on the document, as we all are here. And I have to say I have to welcome the formation of the working group, as we outlined last time we all met together, when I was able to give you a full description of the transformation we're undertaking. I would say that even looking at the document we put forward, things are moving very fast in the Fire and Rescue Service insofar as our transformation and the need to. And that probably still reflects some of the issues that we were there, where we were as opposed to where we are, which is why I think the formation of a working group to act as that critical friend and help keep us online would be really helpful as well. I'm happy with the scope, particularly that it also includes emergency planning now, which is part of my remit as well, so it reflects the full amount of my remit. So other than that, I'm very happy and I welcome the formation.
Thank you very much. Looking at the timescale, I'd like to mention to members now that with regards to the working group, which now goes to the corporate overview and scrutiny, the terms of reference to be approved, the working group membership needs to be decided today. With that in mind, there is a consultation that will be launched in the very near future. We will be having a private briefing, and so it is very important that at the conclusion of this meeting this morning that we will be joining Steve, where we will be going over some details that it was hoping originally the working group would be already established to be able to look at. But because it's not established yet, we will take that step and taking the briefing immediately on the closure of this meeting. Whether we stay here or whether we go to the members' conference room, we can decide by who's with us at the time. May I ask for comments from the committee? Are you telling me we got it so perfect the first time that you... I must admit a lot of work has gone into this. Jan?
Yeah, I haven't, other than the little bit of blue that's gone in now that's changed it. But have I got this right? That are we then, we're not going to adjust our delivery according to how much money we've got? Because that's how I read it, that we've got to have value for money, yeah, quite. And then we're responsible for delivering the budget position and the detailed understanding. So I was thinking, does that mean that we get 2 million, doesn't matter what it is, 2 million, but out of that we then Steve has to then deliver the service. And I was thinking, I don't think that's a good way round sometimes. You ought to be able to say, this is what we need to cover our county safely. And with all the increased housing that's going on now, it's indescribable. Therefore, we need that, and therefore we should agree. I've never agreed to the view that every year, for a long time I've been on this council, of keep reducing. We can reduce, I feel, on certain things where we have a better understanding or a better way of working. I can understand that. But I'm just really worried that, is that what it meant? That we have to really go with what we can deliver towards the budget that we're being given? I'm worried about that.
I will turn to Steve in just a moment. I think it needs to be emphasised that Fire and Rescue have not been asked to save any money within their budget whatsoever, and this plan is not fundamentally, is totally built around government inspection of our fire and rescue service. But if I turn to Steve to answer more fully.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. You've nailed it more or less there, I think. Yes, there are no savings target placed upon us, and therefore that means we're in a position to be able to deliver the transformation that's required in order to meet the risks across Surrey that we've been able to determine through this process. We do hope, as the HMICFRS outlined, that we will be more efficient and effective in doing this, and therefore, the scale of which we don't know, there should be more efficiencies, which we would expect to either be initially reinvested in the service in order to allow us to deliver those transformational requirements, and then secondly, should there be anything available after that, that the County Council would then invest into system or services that are also aimed at community protection, prevention activities for the most vulnerable as well, which would help us, of course.
Could I ask Jason or Denise, am I right that there has been an additional budget added to fire and rescue to a system with this transformation?
Yes, that's correct. So the transformation the fire service is going through is quite extensive, and we've recognised that if that's going to be successful, and if we are going to get the fire and rescue service that Surrey's communities will need, then we have to invest some money into it. We've taken the opportunity of putting in a business case for funding through the transformation funding for around about £900,000 to actually provide resources to support the programme, which is a mix of things like project management resource. It also covers the cost of the Deputy Chief Fire Officer who's been seconded over from the London Fire Brigade and some other resources as well. Obviously, that's just our preliminary estimate of the costs, and already many of those resources have been brought in to support the programme. If our needs increase as the programme goes forward, then we'll be looking to put in an additional claim. So largely with this, we're going to be funding this and resourcing this to achieve whatever's required.
Thank you very much. I felt it was important to have that reassurance to all of the committee and to the general public, who get very concerned that our fire and rescue, since the report came out. But I think it's also important to mention that our report is no better or no worse than any others of the fire service done at the same time under this new examination scrutiny programme that's been running through the government. I'm unsure of its official title. Now, the first person was Jonathan.
Thank you. I must admit, I know an awful lot less about this than I would claim to know about the countryside. As far as I'm aware, though, that one of the changes in the fire service is that it's no longer a fire service, it's more of a fire and rescue service. So looking at the potential witnesses, I wonder if there's any scope for including anything more on the rescue side as well as on the fire side. I'm thinking that, we had the major flooding in North Surrey. The fire service worked closely with the county and the police in responding to that. And I wonder, in terms of planning for the transformation of the future, the question is, to what extent is the fire and rescue service and others able to coordinate to do more effective responses to those kind of things? So I wonder if I'm not sure what's going to be in the consultation, clearly, but I know what you've given us here. So I'm kind of thinking, that in the sorts of things that might happen, is the fire service able to respond to those sorts of things? So as well as thinking about comments in what you're proposing to do, there might be a sort of an earlier sort of witness session where you look at the risks and the sorts of things that we've got to respond to. So the current structure looks like talk to members, talk to officers, agree a consultation, talk to people while you consult, see what happens back, move forward. I'm wondering if there's something about, what the context is and making sure whoever's on the member reference group really understand that context and the sorts of changing context that you've got to respond to. The second question was about budgets. You note that SRFRS budgets are to be scrutinised. Can you confirm that's revenue and capital budgets? And also, presumably, it's also about physical assets as well as financial resources, because my assumption is the fire service has an estate across Surrey, and this transformation process may involve changes to the management of that estate. How much land the fire service needs, whether it needs less, whether it needs more premises. Numbers of fire stations, how that's changed, whether that's worked or not. Now, I'm imagining that's all within scope.
Steve, would you like to take that, or Jason?
I'll give it a shot first, if I may. We have been a fire and rescue service for some time. Legislation changed quite a number of years ago under the Fire and Rescue Services Act from the Fire Services Act. So that was around about 2005, 2004, I think, statutory instrument. We work through the Local Resilience Forum, which I also happen to be the chair of, which is not part of the County Council, but it's a statutory obligation that comes down through the Cabinet Office, and that is around resilience. So generally in police area, there is a Local Resilience Forum. The duty of the Local Resilience Forum is to coordinate all of the partners, be they blue light, what's called first responders, second responders and third responders, be that faith groups and volunteers, etc., to emergencies. And first of all, to identify, as a result of the national risk picture, which is published twice a year, one of which is obviously closed to the public because it talks about other risks like terrorism, etc., others which are fairly open and well known. So we consider all of those risks in the Local Resilience Forum across the whole of Surrey. I chair that group, and as you know, I'm also the Acting Chief Fire Officer as well, and as the Director of Surrey's Community Protection and Emergencies, I also look after emergency planning for the County Council as well, through Ian Good, who you'll be familiar with. So when there is an incident, the protocols of the Local Resilience Forum kick in, and they establish, for example, who would lead an emergency. So there's a set national protocol for that, and there's a local protocol for that. And for example, in floods, because we are the rescue service as well, we coordinate all of the rescue activities, and that's our statutory duty. So that's how it's looked after. I'm happy to expand on that and go through it either privately or whatever, or particularly perhaps enable people to understand that when we get to the working group, formation of the working group, so they can understand the context of which we're working in. So I'm happy to do that. I'm not sure if I've covered everything there, but I can do. Yep.
I just wanted to make the point, Jonathan. I think you've touched on one of the most fundamental elements of what we're trying to change here. The Fire and Rescue Service has always done some really good things in terms of protecting Surrey's communities, but one of the changes we're trying to make in the transformation is to integrate them more with other services that are also doing similar things. And I mean, symbolically, one of the things that we've done to indicate that change is to change the job title. So it used to be Chief Fire Officer. Steve is now the Director of Community Protection and Emergencies, and we've put emergency, which is a long name, but it kind of reflects, it makes a statement about what we're trying to do, and also moving the emergency planning function so that falls under Steve rather than being separate has also been an important thing. And the key to what we're trying to do here is integrate fire and rescue much more with wider county council services and also with partners, and I think a relevant thing for the working group to be looking at.
Thank you, Jason. I'm just going to say that you mentioned about risk profiling. You'll remember I did a presentation about our transformation, and I talked about we will be using a risk-based approach for our integrated risk management plan, which is about to go to consultation, which we'll talk about later. That is the basis under which we have done our analysis of how we will set our resources over the next few years. And that comes from the community risk profile. And in the document, it goes out to public consultation. There's a link to that. It's already available, actually, and it's not just our risk assessment. It's also linked to the Local Resilience Forum risk profile as well. Shall I pause there? I can see you talking.
Did I look that keen? Jason, I wonder if you could clarify something for me. When we talk about emergency planning, that could come under the working group. I understand that possibly emergency planning will be leaving this environment scrutiny and going to another committee?
I think there have been questions about which committee it's most appropriate for it to come under. I don't think any decision has been taken yet. I certainly think, irrespective of that, though, I think how we are connecting together fire and rescue activity with the wider emergency planning is very relevant, because that's going to be central to how effectively we are protecting Surrey's communities.
I just felt, from a chairman's point of view, is that if that somehow ended, because I look at this group as possibly working up to 2 years with fire and rescue, and I emphasise that to members. This is a member working group that will be running for about 2 years, and it will, when it's called, be doing some quite, well, all our work is important, but quite specific work. And if we suddenly find that part of it is coming under another committee, then I would like a representative from that other, well, maybe we can leave a co-opted place or something when that is actually understood.
That might be a sensible thing to do. I think for the emergency planning, it had been the business continuity elements of what they do, I think, that prompted consideration of where should that activity sit. I certainly think, emergency planning, how it links to communities and emergency events, to me is still very relevant for this committee. But if there is some changes, then I think a co-opted member would be a good way to manage that.
Thank you. Denise, you wanted to come in.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you, Jonathan, for your question. I think drawing attention to the partnerships that Surrey Fire and Rescue have, it's a very extensive list, and obviously Steve has referenced the Local Resilience Forum. We currently have extensive work underway with the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, the Environment Agency, with water safety, a water safety initiative. There's a site visit which is going to be organised in the spring for Teddington. So I think actually requiring access to witnesses as required, I think, is a very important point, because you can focus on the sort of high-level issues, but actually you do need to understand the extent of the work that Surrey Fire and Rescue undertakes with its partners in Surrey and into London as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if members of this committee have actually ever attended any of the drills that's gone on water and watched the, I'm going to call it the emergency wall going up, but it's quite amazing with the Territorial Army and all different services working together. If you get the opportunity, I strongly suggest, and they're normally well publicised. Denise and I know, attended the last one. I was sensible, I knew where it was. I went in Jabari's. Denise received a few smiles as she walked along the woodwork. But an incredible experience and very knowledgeable. The people that's there, what you can learn about on the emergency planning, flooding issues as such. Now, if we move on to our next speaker, Sarge, that's you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's a welcoming news that for the first time there is no saving hanging over our head on the fire and rescue team performance. But my concern is that this report here came out after the transformation scoping document. Have we confident that we can address all the issues that are raised in there within the scoping document? Transformation work?
Sorry, is that the HMICFRS one you had?
It's the main document.
Sure. Yes, so we'd had as I probably outlined in the last time we met, when I talked about the transformation, we'd already had a debrief and had an understanding of what the issues were likely to be. And I think last time we were on the cusp of launch, which then got delayed and then got overshadowed by drones, etc. as well. So we had all of those shenanigans going on before Christmas. But we have subsequently had a lot of discussions with HMI CFRS and with Zoe Binningham, the Chief Inspector, as well, and Drew Sharpling, our personal one. And so we're really, really clear. We're working on a weekly basis with our liaison officers at HMI CFRS. We mentioned earlier our new deputy, Sabrina. She's come from London, but actually she was seconded to the Home Office, to HMI CFRS, to help put the inspection programme together. So luckily we are very much aware of not just our responsibilities, which of course are those statutory responsibilities to respond to the inspectorate, but also to the way in which they are looking towards us to respond as well. So hopefully we are, and hopefully when the working group gets together, we'll be able to bring you up to speed on where we are on that as well. I do note I missed a second part of a question that was asked earlier about revenue and capital. And I'll just to say that as far as I'm concerned, of course, that would include everything, because it's important to be able to make sure that we have the resources available, and we plan to have the resources available going forward. And we have capital programmes as well, going up to 2030, which are planned within the service. Insofar as the estate, which was the second part of that question around infrastructure, the estate is managed by property, but part of our transformation is to make sure that all of our estate is used in an integrated way to provide community-focused projects. So recently we started working in Walton with teams from adult social care as well, and integrating them there as well. I hope that answers all the parts of those questions.
Thank you. Tina?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. May I ask Steve, please? Page 91, staff feedback. I wondered if you could comment on that. Whereas the residents were quite happy, there was only 40% of staff responded, and they weren't particularly happy. So, what can we do, or can you sort of throw any light on that, really, please?
Thank you. So, Madam Chairman, that report, as you'll see, is about 2 years old now. So it is historical. I think it reflects where we were, but I also think it reflects the culture that we still have within the service, which is a highly unionised workforce as well. So the morale within the workforce is very much influenced by our unions. That's not a bad thing, it's just a fact. And that's not just a local picture, that's a national picture. So we are, in a way, a victim to those larger forces that take place insofar as affecting morale. I have, however, and we do have a very good relationship with our local fire brigades union representatives, and we have had that discussion since the inspectorate about how we can address staff morale. And it was a question which actually Jason, Denise and I were talking with the fire brigades union about just around about Christmas time. And one of the issues was that we all have a duty to make sure we don't drive down staff morale. For us, it's really important about staff welfare, because they do an important job as well, and it's a tricky job sometimes. And unlike other jobs, it could be days when some of our firefighters don't go home. And that's a really difficult thing. And there are very few jobs like it in the country other than the armed forces and the police. So having morale and trust is a really important thing for us, as well as good leadership. So those are issues within our cultural reform which we want to tackle as well. So although that report is 2 years old, it does reflect a wider issue within our workforce across the fire and rescue service, which we need to tackle. But we feel we can't tackle that alone. We feel that we need to tackle that with the Fire Brigades Union, who have a huge influence on that as well.
Thank you very much. Denise?
Thank you, Chairman. If I could just add to that, there has been huge efforts made in nurturing an open and warm, welcoming culture within the fire service and giving those developmental opportunities And I think the leadership culture has disseminated down throughout the service. I have received first-hand accounts from frontline firefighters that they very much feel and see that. So that's just in support of that concern that you have. Thank you.
I think communication within the service has definitely improved, without a doubt. May I turn you, Jan?
I'm only going to suggest, because I've been on this for so many years, I could probably, if it wasn't for my age and weight, I could be a firefighter. But getting back to the series, because we've gone from a 4-handed pump, then we went to 5 under Russell, then it's gone back, I think, to 4. We have all of these things going on, which I don't think keeps you stable amongst the workforce. But definitely for me, I think I don't see, like in Epsom, the fire service really coming to us as a local committee. I mean, I've been on that, I don't know how many, since 2002. But we used to have a yearly presentation, and you could ask that the station manager, what I'd like to call his title now, ask really deep probing questions about what's going on, and he invariably gave a good report. I haven't seen that for several years now, and my feeling is you start from going down to the local committee, the councillors there then tell other people, and it sort of filters out to the area, and I don't feel that is happening at the moment and hasn't for some while. And equally, the second thing for me is all the things we suggested that would help the fire service over years, like earning money, like advertising on the side of something or promoting something here, never got taken up. Were you with me, Mark? Yeah, year after year, we come up with all these schemes, yeah, and at the end of it, about 2 years later, you say, has that happened? So I've now got the hump, is the expression I would use, because I feel that we did do things, and we did put forward ideas as a committee, and I was scathing about the reduction then. Every year, year on year, because of government funding, we were having to reduce the budget for the fire. So therefore, we weren't doing what we needed for the people always. We were having to work towards this budget, which is not of any of our making. But I just hope that someone up there is listening and realises that you can't have a really good system without having systems in place which will safeguard. And it's mentioned in the report about we are supposed to be looking after our people, and evidently they're saying, I'm not sure what the risk was, but we haven't done well in this report, to put it mildly. So I'm hoping under Steve's leadership here now that we do go forward, but I just want to put a little marker up in the sky, I think, to say that Surrey really have to every year, not always now, start talking about reducing or budget because of our increased population and the more we need. And like Grenfell Tower, we did have the big high ladder, which they didn't there. So we were good in Surrey in that respect. But I just think we need to be, if we never had a fire again and we were spending millions on this service, that would suit me, because what we've done is provide a service, but we haven't got anybody dying or anything happening. So I just feel that you can't equate it by saying we've had only three deaths this year, but we've got to reduce the budget. No. We should have a budget that's sufficient to have virtually nil deaths. That's what you should aim for. And on the opposite side, I've never heard anyone say anything bad about our fire service. Everybody who's been anti what's been going to happen in Epsom have always been complimentary about our fires, and they hold every fireman in high regard. So I don't want people to think because of a bad report here we don't hold them in high regard, because we do.
Jan, may I point out that it's not Fire and Rescue's responsibility to turn up at your local committee. It's the responsibility of your local committee to invite them.
Differently, because if you're providing a major service, as they are, they should be saying we are available, and then the Germans should say, well, we'll slot you into there. But it's difficult if they're not actually engaging. So I can see where you're coming, but I don't see the engagement. Perhaps if we get a two-way thing, I'm not chairman, so I'm not involved in this, but I do think it takes both ways, Rachel, but I take your point.
I don't disagree, but I think it comes to the stage where local committees need to take responsibility to invite the people in that they need to check on, and you are responsible for that in your area. Therefore, I would say the local committee needs to move on that. And I will take a step in faith and say the Fire and Rescue Service will always be pleased to attend a local committee meeting, providing they are given the opportunity to have notice of the meeting so that someone can be available. Yes, Denise.
Thank you, Chairman. So there is an annual report published for each local and joint committee. It's probably with the Chairman's discretion as to how that is taken, if it's for information or with a presentation, but we certainly would be very happy for staff to attend, to present those reports and to take questions. I think that's important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Sarge.
In Woking, actually, we have the ONS committee. They come in annually to make a presentation. So it's available there. You just need to ask for it.
Yes, we've often seen them at ONS. May I move on to your approval of these terms of reference? Yes? Thank you very much. Can we move on to the working task group? A minimum is 3. I don't recommend 3. I recommend 5 members. I actually changed the minimum and took it to 5. May I have Tina? Jan. I will be going as ex-officiary. My vice chairman, Sarge, that was a slip, will be chairing, as all vice chairmans do, the subcommittee. If at any stage Sarge is unavailable, then I will step in as chairman of this committee, because I will be keeping up to date on the issues it's running. That gives us 3. I don't want to put my name down as a member because I can attend as ex-officiary. Keith, is it something close to your heart that I could encourage you?
Chairman, I think that as I've already volunteered for one of our other subgroups, I don't want to put my name. That doesn't indicate a lack of interest in the subject.
I completely understand that.
But I do think that, similar to before, you should arrange to invite all members to be notified of that group's meetings so that all of us can have the opportunity of going along to contribute if we are able to do so.
A lot of this will need continuity. With this group, continuity will be extremely important. Amanda, is this something that would interest you?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm not sure it's an area that's my forte, to be honest, so there's probably other subcommittees you might better have me on. Obviously it's all very new to me yet, so I'm getting a feel for everything that's happening and available, so I wouldn't want to commit too early.
It's a working group, not a subcommittee. I think that's just the terminology.
There you go. That shows to you that I'm still finding my way. So, yeah.
We'll have you on board soon enough. Marissa? It will be at least 2 years. We will be called in when the fire service needs us. So meetings should be set well in advance, Steve. There will be a programme of improvements and we will be feeding into each level of it. Would you be able to expand on that?
Yes, of course. So if you look at page 95, no, wrong page, just a moment. I'll get my glasses on. Yeah, one of the back pages. 93, yes. It talks about proposed work plan on there. Obviously, February is where we are now. There is a slight typo on the right-hand column. It says DSO. That should say DCFO, and that is Sabrina, who can't be here today, unfortunately. So it looks March and May, June, July, August, September. So those are the ones which we're probably, you can see what they're sort of timescales that we're looking at. And within those, there are two for the working group, one in March, May, other than today, of course, and the next one in June, July, and thereafter, probably around about September time as well, I would think as well. So the idea, very much, as we said in terms of references, to be a critical friend, for us to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, for you to ask the questions, and to give us some representation back from those which you do represent.
Give the thought to it. I always worry about logistics, and I just wish this council had ways of us using things where you can go into screens and watch meetings and participate in meetings from where you are, because it's always an issue of getting places. But I will do my best. I will certainly read everything that gets sent to me. If there's meetings I can't attend, I'll still find a way of participating. I will do my best. Chair,
I think someone doing their best is all we can ever ask for, Marissa. The idea of a working group on a, what is it called? A Skype meeting isn't something. Oh, Steve's obviously an IT techie. Yes, Steve.
We have a fire station in almost every borough, so I think we can move around and be flexible. There's no reason, I move. Every week I go on a fire station, set my office up there, so it's not a problem for us to move around. No, I think it's for us to be flexible for you, and we'll make sure that's what we are. Obviously there'll be a number of you that need, but it will be what you require first. Yeah.
I think this is termed as partnership working. Member reference groups need to set their timescales and agendas together with Steve so that we can get it together. People working in partnership get better results. So we have down officially as the members. Your chairman will be Sarge.
Yeah. So
and we have Tina, Jan, Marissa. One co-opt possibly from another committee. I'm an ex-officiary. I think I'll leave the last space open if there is someone. I'm not opposed to having a member from outside of this committee if someone is enthusiastic about it. So we have one vacancy. So that will give us the solid 5.
Madam Chairman, I'll be happy to do it, yeah.
We'll work on it together, Amanda.
Yeah.
There you go.
We have our full amount. So with your approval, members of the committee, those are the 5 people. I am not putting any objections to when these member reference groups are called that the rest of the committee is not notified, and should you wish to go along, but continuity will be very strong in this group. So that if you're missing a few and going to an odd one, you are not going to gain a lot. All right? Thank you very much indeed.
Chairman, I think it's also just worth noting, out of interest, that those members who, including Amanda, and I think we should say thank you, because she's obviously thought about it in the last few minutes during this discussion, that the members who have indicated are actually quite a good geographical coverage of Surrey, covering, I think, all 4 corners of the county. And although the issues are strategic, I think geography does play an important role. And certainly, I think other members will attend this subgroup as and when they're able to, and particularly if there are localised issues that may arise.
Thank you very much indeed. That remains for item 7, our tracker and forward work programme, which you all have a new copy. You will see that the only change that I can see to bring to your attention is that we have added the new work group, the Cabinet, with the request of Mike Goodman, Cabinet Member for the Environment, made for the CRCs, the recycling centres, community recycling centres, and he requested Dr Andrew Povey to chair that group. I understand that the terms of reference have been drawn up and that the Cabinet Member will be approving those because they set that group up. However, Dr. Provey has assured me he will be reporting back to us before he takes it to Cabinet, because I feel it's important that it comes to this committee as well. So that is the addition that has been added to our future plan. We are still sitting on the Basingstoke Canal, which there will need to be work done, which will go back to Lisa again, which does not have a date, and the rest is following up on work that we're currently doing. Any comments on the forward plan? Thank you very much. Can I ask everyone to join me now with Steve Owen Hughes in the members' conference room, which is next to the members' room on the second floor next to the kitchen. And if you're feeling enthusiastic, you could help carry the flasks and the goodies up to that room next to the members' kitchen. Thank you. Jonathan.
I may have blinked, but do we need to go through the tracker as well?
Those items are on the forward work programme. They are covering... Oh no, you're looking at the two items that's outstanding. I beg your pardon, you are quite right. I will chase those through. We have not had... That work has not been done, Jonathan. I have checked on it. Yes.
I think it would be useful for the work on the recycling rates to feed into the CRC committee that you've just talked about. And I think they're due to meet in 1 or 2 weeks, or either on Monday or Monday week. So I think that's a matter of urgency if that information is going to be usefully looked at by councillors. And I'm concerned about the second one because we were consulted on before a public consultation about something. The consultation is now finished, it's gone to Cabinet, it's gone to Council, we're going ahead, but we asked a question before, or the early stage of that consultation, and we haven't yet had a response. I think it would be good to have a response and make sure that if there is an impact, there's a mechanism for that to be fed into the way in which that's been implemented.
Thank you. I will follow that through. I'll bring the meeting to a close. It's exactly midday, and if you could join me by 12:05 in the conference room, please.